Yay. Here we are. Oh, I always get that loud, like, this meeting is being recorded.
Did you get it?
I did.
Okay.
Okay, guess what, everybody? We're here with Dave Kennedy again. We always like talking to you, Dave. You know
Yeah.
why?
Why is
Because you
that?
have the best stories.
There's some stories that, yeah, I get all the insider info about all the stuff going on.
Yeah, and it is a holidays, although this is something that's going to be like, this is important information for everywhere,
Yep.
all throughout the year. But I did try to get a little festive today.
Yeah. No, this is kind of our story of how the Grinch stole your property for Christmas.
Yeah, yes. We don't want the Grinch stealing. We want him to have his heart grow 4 sizes or whatever it is and not
Right.
steal. But the Grinch is trying to steal. So, okay. So, Dave, I want you to tell us the story about
Mhm.
what just happened this
Yeah.
last week and how this is so crazy, you guys. Okay. Tell us the story.
Yeah, so we foiled a fraudster's plan to try to steal somebody's property. Essentially, what it was, where we were presented with a cash contract, small dollar amount, not small dollar amount, but not like a home purchase, but a cash purchase for a lot. And the kind of catch was it has to close within 5 days or whatever. There was a time crunch put on how quickly this thing had to close.
Right. And that was put on by the person who was
Was selling the property.
selling the property. Okay.
Correct.
This person who was selling the property had the time crunch. They needed to get it done in 5 days. The person buying it was buying it with cash.
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
So we're presented with a cash contract, so there's no banks involved. So it's a little bit different how we handle things. But in this circumstance, we did a title exam on the property, and we found that there was a mortgage on the property, but not just on that property. It's what's called a blanket mortgage. So sometimes if you're going to a bank to get a loan for whatever, it could be a business loan, any type of loan, or if it's just kind of a cash out of all your equity, what they'll do is they'll look at and see everything that you own, and they'll put a blanket mortgage over several properties. So you'll have a mortgage for, $200,000, but it'll actually be leaned against 4 different properties that you own. They assign a value to each property, and then, that way they can come up with the money to loan you. So in those circumstances, we get what's called a partial release of mortgage. So the mortgage is still in place, but they release, whatever property that you're selling. The bank typically will give us a dollar amount to tell us how much to release. So we
So,
reached
like,
out to,
look, just I want to put this kind of in layman's terms too, because the blanket loans aren't something that people use all the time. You see it a lot of times with investors too, if they have
yeah,
like multiple investment properties, and then the bank that they have this blanket loan through. First of all, there's not many banks that do these blanket loans, and then if they have 4 properties, one of them's worth 100, one of them's worth 50, one of them worth, and they are the ones who kind of determine
correct.
this lot is worth 25,000 or
Right.
whatever it's worth.
Mm-hmm. Correct. Yeah. So, like I said, the loan is not just specifically into that. Typically, when you own a house, you just have a loan on that property. And then when you go to sell it, the bank says this is how much you owe, and you pay it off, and you sell the house, and you get the remainder of the funds.
Right.
So in this circumstance, though, we get the payoff for the partial release.
Well,
And
didn't you say you found out there was a mortgage against the property? Like the
yeah,
guy who was selling it didn't indicate that there was
yes,
any kind of mortgage on the property. And
right,
you found out after running
correct.
the title search that there was.
Right. Yeah. So there were several red flags kind of right off the bat. The first red flag was the how quickly it had to close. Now we get pushed all the time to close quickly, and it's not necessarily means there's fraud. There's just, there's circumstances, but whenever we're told that things need to be done by a certain day and there's a sense of urgency, that's the first kind of red flag for us to just slow down and make sure that everything, all the boxes are getting checked, T's are getting crossed, I's are getting dotted. So that was kind of the first red flag. The second red flag was the fact that this seller didn't indicate that they knew that they had a mortgage on the property.
Right.
So when we reached out to them, we said, hey, there's a mortgage on there. We're going to have to get a release for it. They were like, what? And
I have a mortgage.
yeah, and
What?
there's sometimes, if you do have a blanket mortgage, sometimes people that are getting loans aren't, as savvy and maybe don't understand that the only reason they were able to get that loan was because they secured it against several properties. Like you said, maybe they had a main property that was worth 150 and they only assigned a value of 35,000 on your lot, but you needed a loan for, 200, so maybe they split it up, but you thought, well, the main loan is on the house, so I guess there could be a situation where maybe somebody didn't understand that there was a lien against a secondary property that they owned in order to obtain a loan.
Yeah,
But
I mean, that doesn't
nonetheless,
happen very often, but you're right. If you
yeah,
own so many properties that you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that that one was on that or
right,
whatever, it's
right. So
possible, but unlikely.
yeah, so it was still weird. So we said, we still need to obtain a payoff for this loan. And then the seller reached back out and they said, well, I'll take care of that. We'll just close and, you just give me the proceeds. And he said something about Bitcoin, which was red flag number 3. What? But as a title company standpoint, we're not going to let you pay off the mortgage on your own. When we're involved in the transaction, since we're the one that are going to be responsible for, the new person getting this property, we want to make sure that the property is free and clear of any liens. So we declined his offer to take care of the mortgage himself and said, no, we have to do it. He was able to come up with a social security number for the borrower, which we then reached out to the bank and obtained a partial release of mortgage. So we obtained the partial release and came back to the seller and let them know, look, the release is more than what the property you're selling it for. So you have to bring so much money to closing in order to sell.
Right.
And another red flag, the answer comes back saying, well, how much am I going to get at closing? And we're like, well, you're not going to get.
You're telling him he's going to have to bring money because the bank is saying that the lot is worth whatever it was, 37,000 or something, but he's selling it for 25,000. And you're telling him, no, you're going to have to bring essentially $13,000 to the closing if you want to sell this property.
Right.
And he's asking you, well, how much am I going to get?
Right. So essentially, then, at that point, we kind of have a good idea that something's up here. And then we have some additional security features that I pay for through the title company, just for my own peace of mind, some security features where we're able to kind of verify who somebody is. So at this point, we have this person try to verify that this person is who they say they're doing. Now, we do this on every transaction. So even if we wouldn't have seen all these red flags, we would have still been able to identify that this was fraud. But we had all these other additional red flags in place. We would have caught this eventually, regardless, before the person signed, but we were able to catch it even quicker in the transaction because we kind of had, an idea. So this person does this verification to confirm who they say they are. They failed the authentication 2 different times. And at that point, the security company that we work with reached out to us and explained to us the reason why they failed. And they said that this person's email address had been created within the last couple of weeks. And second, the IP address was used was in like Central Africa. So we were able to then reach out to the person and kind of call them on their shenanigans, which then they disappeared. So the kind of crazy thing is this was presented to us with a buyer's agent and a listing agent on this transaction.
Right.
So we reached out to the listing agent to ask them, have you met this person? And they said, no, they've communicated through text, email, and phone conversations during normal business hours. It wasn't like, oh, we only get calls at, 4 a.m. because that's always kind of the red flag that we're looking for in these types of fraud. The emails are poorly worded. They don't make sense. We're getting them in the middle of the night. But everything checked off. And the agent even told us that they obtained this lead through a verified, normal, bona fide lead generating platform that they pay for.
Yeah. So like a
this,
lot of agents pay for like, for example, like Zillow and there's a few other ones, Home Light and things like that, where you can pay these places and they'll send you leads. Like someone goes in and says, "Oh, I see that this is for sale," or whatever, and then their name that's when you, like they say, "Oh, put your name in for more information."
correct.
Agents pay these places for those leads. So
Right.
this agent, this listing agent, got this lead from one of these lead sources that were like, a legitimate lead source.
Yeah. Yeah. So everything at face checked off on this transaction. But in all reality, what had happened was this fraudster had found this piece of property, recognized that there was no building on this property,
Mm-hmm.
and attempted to impersonate the seller and sell the person's property without them knowing.
Yeah.
Likely there was a sign in that on that lot for, this for sale. If the actual owner would have drove by and seen that there was a sign in the yard and everything.
They
But
would have been like, what?
it's kind of crazy though that this is the fraud. They're looking for properties. Right now it's just empty lots that
Well,
are
because
just
those can fly under the radar pretty
correct.
easily. Typically,
Yeah.
they're cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, people own them outright. And
Yep.
like this, like the owner had no idea because they obviously didn't see a sign. They didn't drive past, so they would have had no clue.
Right.
The actual owner, not the
Right.
one posing as the owner.
Mm-hmm.
And this, like you said, this supposed seller is like signing a contract with an agent and
Right.
selling this property.
Yeah. And another reason why they're kind of prime for picking too is because they can usually put a lower dollar amount on it.
Yeah.
And usually then you got a cash buyer. So then it
Right.
can close quicker. So, there's certain things they're looking for, but I've been hearing about this fraud since I've been in the business. And it used to be, you would always hear about, it was, the snowbirds, older people that owned a property here in Cincinnati and they go down to Florida for the winter.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody would actually break into the house and then usually, show the house, get listing pictures taken, everything, change the locks on everything, do a fake deed transfer down at the county into their name or their fake name, their straw man name, and then they would sell the property. But now with the digital age, they don't even have to be here. They can communicate with the realtor and everybody just online, on the phone, through text messages, and they can kind of be able to steal somebody's property without them even being aware.
This is so crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, I am just so thankful that, first of all, I'm thankful that I use you guys all the time because you have so many security things in place that a lot of other title companies do not use. And you don't charge any additional money for people to close with you guys. And you have these things in place.
Yeah,
I mean, that's so good.
That's not a fee that we pass on. It's just a fee that, we absorb, just again to safeguard the transaction. Like you said, the agent that brought the transaction to us was actually the buyer's agent. So we were able to protect their buyer from buying a piece of property that, they didn't have the authority to buy. Eventually, that the owner of that property would have came back and said, "Hey, what are you doing?" And what if they had bought that property and they were planning to build on it? And there was a house on, getting built. I mean, this could have been an absolute nightmare.
Oh my God.
For the people buying the property.
I can't even imagine.
It's scary out there. So like I said, it's important to be working with people that take this type of stuff seriously because you just never know.
And so what are some of the questions like because here in Southwest Ohio, it's the buyer who chooses the title company in these real estate transactions, which is so strange because everywhere else in most of the United States, it's the seller who chooses it, which is kind of interesting to me. But anyway, typically it's the buyer who chooses the title company. So what kind of questions should the buyer or should the realtor be asking when they're trying to find a title company that they want to use? I mean, are there questions that you would recommend people asking?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely ask them right off the bat, what kind of security features do you have in place to, identify fraud?
Yeah.
And you're not, and there's just different types of fraud. I don't know if we spoke, a couple of months ago, but, the wire fraud is very real and happens in our
Mm-hmm.
industry all the time. So it's not just one type of fraud. You need to be working with people that are constantly, you know, hearing about and learning about and are up to date on the latest stuff going on. I heard about this type of land fraud, you know, forever, but I've never seen it happen here in Cincinnati. It seems that old adage that, about stuff happening in Cincinnati, like later than everything else. That's true. So,
Yeah. I think that was a Mark
yeah,
Twain quote, maybe someone
right,
should
right.
fact check that, but I think it's Mark Twain. Like, if you don't, just whatever's happening, just wait 20 years or something, go to
Yeah.
Cincinnati. If the world was going to end, I'd go to Cincinnati because it wouldn't happen for another 20 years. So
Right,
something like
exactly. And that's true. And that's kind of what happened here in this situation. So, when we have, staff meetings on how to identify this type of stuff and just everybody being aware of it, just looking out for the major red flags, as far as, working with, if you're a buyer or an agent or anyone that's concerned with that, one question that you might want to ask the listing agent is, what type of contact have you had with your client? Have you met this person in person?
Yeah.
Or have you only communicated with them electronically? And if you have only communicated with them electronically, have you obtained their ID? Have you seen a picture of their picture ID so you know who you're dealing with is actually who you're dealing with?
And, I hope people would do that as a rule of thumb. You hear about these realtors too, and this isn't necessarily fraud. I think this is more crime, a different type of crime, where these realtors will just go meet random buyers
Yeah.
at houses to show them. They get a lead off a sign, and this buyer says, "Oh, I want to see this house. Come show it to me." And the realtor just hops in their car and runs over there. And it's like, no, no, no. You get on a Zoom with them. You see who they are. You have them
Yeah.
send your ID. You
Right.
tell somebody where you're going. Bring somebody with you. It's those kind of things. You would protect yourself in these situations from being murdered or
Right.
whatever, or robbed,
Right.
but it's funny how we just get so excited and we're like, oh, great, it's a lead, it's a legitimate lead. And we think it is, and it's not always.
Yeah, and the thing is also, especially in this type of circumstances too, is this came through verified bona fide channels. You know what I mean? This agent received this lead from a legitimate lead generating company.
I hope they went back to that company and said,
yeah,
what kind of measures do you have in place
right,
for fraud?
right,
I mean, that'd probably be very difficult to do. I can't
right.
imagine what kind of security measures would go into place for a huge company like that. But still, I mean,
They should be
if they
aware.
need to let them know.
Right. And then likewise, as a title company here, we received this contract via traditional channels. An agent sent us a contract and asked us to work on it. It wasn't like we had someone from the internet call us and say, "Hey, I got this deal I want you to close."
Right.
So, I mean, the idea is that, that these fraudsters are getting so sophisticated and they're getting so good at this that you just kind of have to look at everything. It's tough, but you kind of have to look at everything suspiciously.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know, what's truly behind people, what their intentions really are. So just kind of the idea is just to, work with the right people and, to a certain extent, kind of be suspicious of everything. Just check and verify what you're doing. If anyone's ever pressuring you to do something quickly, that, this has to be done now, sense of urgency, that's a chance for you to actually slow down and just, don't cave to the pressure and just kind of identify, what you need to do to make sure that things are being done correctly.
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, I feel for both sides on that. And I'm so glad you guys were able to find it. It sucks all the way around, but I know people lost time and money in this, but it's better than losing, a big chunk of money, potentially a lawsuit. I mean, there's so much more that could have snowballed out of this that, this is kind of peanuts as compared to what it could be.
Yes.
So, man, well, thanks for doing your job well.
Yeah. Well, like I said, it's, and I like getting this information out here. I think it's important for people to recognize, you know, what's going on. And again, just be aware of
Agree.
things.
And you foiled the Grinch's plan.
Yeah, yeah. Send him back up the mountain.
Exactly. I can tell you of little kids because you've probably
Yeah.
been watching that.
Oh yeah, over and over and over.
Well, thanks, Dave Kennedy,
Yep.
Fidelity Land Title. If anybody, I can put the information, I'll put the information in the down in the chat and in the email too. So people need to get a hold of you, or if they have anything that they need to do title wise. You guys
Yep.
also have an attorney too that can help with anything that you would need real estate related for your attorney too.
Yep, we've got 2 attorneys on staff that can help you with pretty much anything that you need. We've pretty much seen it all at this point.
I bet you have. All right. Well, happy holidays, Dave
Yep, happy
Kennedy.
holidays and thanks for having me.
Yep.
All right.